Hello. Hi everyone. I was thinking about sharing two books of women since I think we had few days ago Women Day, and I didn't do any post on that. Last year, few years ago, I wrote about women and Women Day, and I talked about violence done on women, because it's still a serious situation that happened. The serious situation that happened, women are victims of abuse, domestic abuse in their homes. And in some countries of the world, women are almost put aside, not everywhere, but in some countries of the world. Okay. Um, Human rights is for everybody. Okay, so this month I didn't write anything about Women's Day, and I think that for some reason I wasn't inspired at all to write something. However, in this video, I want to share with you uh, two books of women that touched me a lot. The first book I think you probably will be interested to read is The Boston Girl. I read that book and that book was very interesting. It's the story of a young Jewish girl who was from a very humble family, like very humble social status, and aspired who aspired to have um, something great in her life. She had dreams, and it is interesting to read in her story how being from a family living in a very humble condition, like almost nothing, to become a woman who achieved her dream because she didn't see the, her race, her gender, her status, her social status. She went step by step, little by little, she could achieve her dream. The Boston Girl is a story around the Second World War, and it is interesting. It is a very interesting story. I had this book. I had this book when I read this book when how do you say, when I was in Washington D.C. I found this book at the public library in Maryland, and that book really touched me. I will put the picture of the cover. I'm sure that if you read, you young ladies, if you are in university, your first year in university, I think it should be good to read this book. Unfortunately, I read that book too late, and what can I say, too late, because I would have been inspired a long time when I start my year in university. It would have helped me a lot to create a very dynamic and positive mindset when it comes to the dream that I had. So I wouldn't be misled by what people told me, but just keep on doing what I wanted to do. So yes, the first book is The Boston Girl. The second book I want to suggest to you, and you can also suggest me books to read for like women author. Of course, I read every author, men and women, but because it's Women's Day, I was thinking about sharing those books. I mean, there are many other authors, women that I read, but I was just inspired to share with you these two. The second one is a book of um, I wrote about her book in my blog. It's Julie Otsuka. Julie Otsuka, she's Japanese American, and she wrote a book When the Emperor Was Divine. That's the name of the book. I had the book by a friend who was at University of Utah. She was doing her doctorate in English, and she had this book. And I don't know how we happened to see each other, but she gave me that book. She told me, maybe you should be reading that just like that. And I took the book, and for some reason, I wasn't really interested, but I mean, okay, we discover another culture. So I read that book. It was really interesting. It's about a family, American Japanese family at the time. I think it's also during World War II, if I'm not wrong. And really, that book really inspired me to go back into my history book and see some details that I didn't know a lot. If you know details about that, maybe you can maybe share your thought on it, or maybe you can also correct if I say something is not right in what I understood. Is the book was about a family, a Japanese American family, who were sent to camp. Like, they were camp that they made somewhere in Utah for Japanese American at the time after, if I'm not wrong, Pearl Harbor attack. If you remember, Pearl Harbor attack was made by Japanese military the flyers. I mean, sorry, Japanese military fly. Okay, they were calling them the Japs at the time. It's interesting to remember that part because Pearl Harbor is an event that happened. Is a I don't want to say even. It's a historical thing that happened, and that uh, resulted in a very tragic situation. When I say resulted, because after Pearl Harbor, America decided to bomb Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and it was something very awful of using an atomic bomb on civilians in Japan. It was Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And the story was interesting because when I read it, I went back to my history book, and the history book in school don't tell you everything, so you have to do more research usually. And I understand that because I understood that later that sometimes the books don't tell you everything in school. You have to go and read more. You have to go to the library. You have to go read and search if you are really interested. But then I didn't know that some Japanese were forced to stay in some camps in America because they were accused of maybe betraying the country after the attack, if I'm not wrong, which wasn't right because many of the Japanese Americans had no connection with Japan, almost like nothing. So they only knew America. Some of them were forced to be sent back to Japan, place that they didn't even know anymore, and then some of them were sent to camp. I remember that when I was young in the 90s, my older sister was watching an old movie. If you know that movie, please can you put the title of that movie? Because it was in English and she was studying English and she liked all movies of the time. And in that movie, I remember the cover of that movie was an American soldier who was in love with a Japanese woman, and they were like a fence between them. And it really marked me. The cover really marked me.